So let me clarify. This is the left side, even though facing you the way it is, it looks like it's on the right. But when you're wearing the sweater, this is the left side and this will be the right side. Now we're going to start with the left side button band. And what we're going to do is we're going to join our yarn at the collar right up here. And we're just going to work our stitching down the side. I'm going to work single crochets to begin. And this is the side where you're going to sew your buttons onto the sweater, should you want buttons. And the right side here is where we're going to add the buttonholes. Now, if you're watching the left-handed version of this, it's going to be, it would be the same way for you. Once the sweater is completed, just make sure that you're not following the video so much that you put the buttons and the buttonholes on the wrong side. Now that's traditionally for a female sweater. If you want to make this into a male sweater or a sweater for guys, I think that would be fine. You might want to just put the buttons and the buttonholes on the opposite sides from what I'm showing you. Now we're going to start working the band that's on the left front side. Again, this is the part where the buttons will be sewn if you decide to use buttons on your vest or sweater. I'm going to work my slip knot and join with the chain, and I'm going to go ahead and work a single crochet in that place, and then in the next row end I'm going to work 2 single crochets. In the next row end, I'm going to work 1 single crochet. In the next, I'm going to work 2. And I'm going to do this all the way down the side. 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets in the next row end. So go ahead and work that all the way across. Okay, I've completed this first foundation row for the button band, and you can see that the stitches are nice and relaxed. They're not pulling, you know, the material closer in, and it's not so many stitches that it's, you know, wavy on the edge. Now, if that is the case, if it doesn't look even like this with you, feel free to change the hook size either to a larger or smaller, depending on the problem that you may or may not be having. But anyway, I'm just maintaining, again, the same G hook throughout, and it has worked very well for me. So now to start row 2, we're going to chain 2, and we're going to work a double crochet in that very first stitch, and in every stitch across the row. Again, you're going to have the same stitch count, 146 stitches. So go ahead and work that across. Now to start row 3, we'll start with a chain 2, and what I show you here is what we're going to do for the next 6 rows. We're going to skip the first stitch. We're going to work a front post double crochet, followed by a back post double crochet. This is the ribbing, very much the same as what we worked at the very beginning. Front post double crochet, followed by a back post double crochet. We're going to work this all the way across the row. Row 3 is going to end with a front post double crochet, and then we're going to work a half double crochet in the turning chain, and your stitch count should remain the same. All right, so we're going to turn now, and this is for rows 4 through 8. We're going to just work the ribbing. Now, if you work with the back side facing, let me just double check. Okay, so we just finished working on the front side. So when you have the back side facing you, those rows are going to start with a back post double crochet, Then you follow that with a front post and then a back post. Now when you're working with the front side facing as you work the ribbing, you will begin these rows with a front post followed by back post. The main thing is that you continue the ribbed pattern as you go. If it's standing out on the front, you work a front post. If it's recessed towards the back, you work a back post. So go ahead and finish those rows. Again, that would be rows 4 through 8. After completing these 8 rows, I'm going to give it a chain and a tug and go ahead and cut a nice long strand so that we can weave this in a little bit later. Okay, so now we have the left button band completed. So now we're going to work on the other side, which is the right side. So now we have the right side. This is where the buttonholes are going to be created. And so instead of starting at the neckline, we're going to start down here at the very bottom of the project. And let's go ahead and I'm going to put my hook in here. All right, and give it a chain as we join. Give it a little tug. Now I'm going to go ahead and work 2 stitches in this first row end. And then, make sure I have the area correct, 1 in the next, 2 in the next, and 1 in the next. Okay, etc. And go ahead and work this all the way as you work along the row end, just like we did for the left side. Work all the way to the collar area, and again you should have about 146 stitches. If you're off by 1 or 2, it's not a deal breaker. I don't want you to worry about that, but you don't want to be off by too many. So definitely shoot for 146 if you're making this size. Of course, if you're making this smaller size, you'll have fewer, but you're going to want to, alternate 2 single crochets in one row and 1 in the next. So go ahead and complete row 1 and then work rows 2, 3, and 4 just like we did on the left side. After having worked those first 3 rows of the ribbing, which is actually the 4th row, so we have the single crochet row, then the 3 rows of ribbing. I hope I didn't confuse you earlier. We're going to chain 2. So after that chain 2, we're going to work in pattern stitch over the first 6 stitches, working those front and back posts double crochets. So after completing those first 6 stitches, we're going to chain 4 for the buttonhole. Skip 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on that 5th stitch we continue in pattern stitch, and we're going to do this for 18 stitches. Okay, so this first double crochet counts as 1, 2, and etc. until we've created 18 post stitches. After completing those 18 stitches, we just repeat from the buttonhole with the chain 4, skip 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on that 5th stitch we work 1 stitch in each of the next 18 stitches, working the ribbing. So that is how you do the buttonhole row, and go ahead and work that all the way across, and I'll show you how this row ends. And then once we reach the end of the row, which is the very top, we're going to chain 4, skip 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to work these last 2 rib stitches and the half double in the turning chain. Okay, so you should have a total of 7 buttonholes along the edge. Now we're going to turn, and I'll just show you how to work in this buttonhole for this row. We're going to chain 2, and then again we work those first 2 ribbed stitches, post stitches, and then when you get to the chain 4 section, we're going to work half double crochets. We're going to work 4 half double crochets in that space, and this is going to help to further define the buttonhole. And then we go back to working the ribbed, or the front and the back post stitches. There's 18 stitches in between, and we work this all the way across. So this is what you're going to work in the buttonhole. Now after this row, you're going to have 2 additional rows of the ribbing, and I'm just going to turn this buttonhole even though I haven't completed this row, and I'm just going to show you quickly how to work the row that follows this. Okay, we work the ribbed stitches just like you would normally across the row, and you probably have already guessed it by now. When you get to the half double crochets, you just continue in the pattern. So if this is a front post, then you're going to work a back post, a front post, a back post, and other smaller stitches, and then a front post over those 4 stitches that are in there, and then you go back in pattern stitch with the back. My hook won't cooperate there. Back post, front post, etc. Okay, so thereby maintaining the ribbed look. So go ahead and finish the row that I've demonstrated to you. Okay, that's row number 6, and then complete row 7, and then row 8, which is just working straight across with the front and the back post. So go ahead and finish that section. After working those additional rows, I have fastened off. I just wanted to show you how the buttons are. This is around the top of the collar where our first button is, and again we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows of ribbing plus the additional row that we worked as the foundation row with the single crochets. Okay, so now we're ready to work the collar on this. Okay, let's take a look at the way the sweater is at this point. And of course these will overlap a bit once we get the buttons sewn into place. But now for this collar, which goes around at this point, we're going to start on this side because we want the front side of the single crochet row to be facing us. So we're going to work the single crochets around through the stitches similarly to the way we worked them for the button bands. So let's go ahead and join our yarn to the collar with a slip knot, and a chain. Let's go ahead and pull that a little bit tightly. Okay, so let's go ahead and work our stitches evenly. We're going to work 1 stitch, we actually make 2 stitches in that first row end, then 1 in the next, 2 in the next, and then 1, and then 2, and then 1. This is over the band section, and then we have 2 more. Okay, so we've worked over that top, and of course you would do that alternating 2, then 1, 2, then 1 into row ends on the other side. So after working alternating two single crochets, then 1, 2, then 1, 2, then 1 over the row ends through this section here. Then I want you to work approximately 16 stitches from that point until the join. Okay, this is the part that doesn't have a really defined stitch section. And on the other side, I'm going to do likewise. I'm going to parallel whatever I did on the other side, I'm going to do on this side. So I'm going to work the 16 stitches along the edge from where the seams were joined until I get to the band, and then go to the 2, then 1, 2, then 1 across the top of that. Okay, now if you're making a smaller size or a larger size, these numbers may differ a bit, and that is okay. But just remember, you want the stitches to be nice and even, not pulled too tightly. You don't want them to be too loose. Okay, and whatever you do on one side, make sure that it mirrors on the other side when you get to that. Now when you get to the back section, this is the easy part because the stitches are well defined for you. So all you have to do is work 1 single crochet in each of those stitches all the way across. Okay, after we've done that, what we're going to do is the same as what we have worked on the band with the buttons. So row 2 of the collar will be just working double crochets, and then rows 3 through 7 will be working the ribbing just the way we did along the button bands. After working 7 rows, that is total, that's 1 row with the single crochet and 6 rows with the double crochet ribbing. I'm going to go ahead and fasten off. I'm going to leave a nice generous strand for hiding this into the work. At this point, we're very close to being done with our vest. So after I show you how to do the arm trim, then I will show you how to add sleeves should you desire to make this into a cardigan sweater instead of just a vest. Okay, I have finished the vest portion. I haven't added the sleeves yet, but I do need to do one thing. I need to take the buttons that I've selected and I need to sew them on to the button band. And the best way to do this is to just very carefully line these buttonholes up just like this, and wherever the button hole is, you can just sew on a button so that it's adjacent to the opening. And I have 7 for this particular size, so go ahead and sew those buttons, and I'll go ahead and put a picture right here in so that you can see what this will look like should you decide to wear this as a vest and not bother with the sleeves. I think it'll be a very nice option. All right, so after you do that, then we're going to go on to the sleeve instructions. Now I'm also going to show you next how to work a trim around the arms, and this is going to be for both the sweater and the vest. After showing you how to do the trim on one side, then of course you would just do the trim on the opposite side just the same. We're going to always start at the seam at the very bottom that is underneath the arm. And what I'll just tell you what I'm going to do, and then I'll begin doing it. We're going to work single crochets evenly around the arm, and I'll give you that stitch count in a bit. Of course, that can vary and will vary a bit according to size, but I'll go ahead and show you how to begin doing this. So just like before, at or near the join, we're just going to make our slip knot. Join with the chain, and we can begin with a single crochet there and evenly around. So I'm going to again work a generous amount of these stitches as I go around. Again, you don't want them to be too tight and you don't want them to be too loose. And I will give you that stitch count once I finish. So go ahead and work them all the way around the sleeve. So as I work across or around the armhole opening, I'm working 2 double crochets in one row end, then 1 in the next, 2, then 1, 2, the 1. Again, just a reminder of what we were doing. We were working around other areas of this sweater. So go ahead and just continue with that. After working all the way around the armhole, I have approximately 114 stitches. Let's go ahead and join with a slip stitch to that first stitch, and let's go ahead and give it a chain and a tug so that we can fasten this off. And I'm going to clip a generous strand. So you may want to just verify to see how many stitches you have around. Again, the goal is that the fabric is not wavy, but it's just to help trim out the way the armhole looks. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do this to the other side. Make sure that you have approximately the same on the other side, just so that the arms do look symmetrical. So once we complete that, if you are wanting to make this into a sweater cardigan, we can go ahead and add the arms, the sleeves rather, to the armhole sections. But go ahead and make sure that you add the trim before we go forward. Okay, now we're ready to work the arms. And before we dive into what we're going to do, I wanted to show you what we're going to do first. Okay, so this is the right arm. And I've gone ahead and you can see the last row that we worked, or actually it was a round that we worked around the armhole. And you could have stopped here if you wanted to make the vest, but let's say you want to go on further and make the arms for the cardigan. So what we're going to do, and I have a stitch marker right here ready to go for the other side. So, and you can see I have a stitch marker right here. I'll go ahead and poke that up. And what we're going to do is we're going to mark the center stitch marker, or the center stitch, which is where the seam was connected, connecting the front panel to the back. Okay, so once you find that mark, and let me just, I'm going to spread this out. Some of this may not make sense, but that's okay. Just hang in with me. And so what I've devised is a system for making a sleeve so that it's a no-sew sleeve. This is all crocheted in the round. But if we just went round and round the armhole at this point, the sleeve would kind of stick out 90 degrees like this from the body of the sweater, creating a lot of bulk in the underarm area. So I wanted to eliminate that. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on the sleeve cap. And I believe this system is going to make these sleeve caps fit perfectly no matter what size you are crocheting. So the first thing I did is we put a stitch marker in the center of the top stitches. And then we count 6 stitches one direction and then 6 stitches the other direction. And so what we do is whichever direction you want to choose, it really doesn't matter. We connect the yarn, and I'm going to demonstrate this. We connect the yarn. We're going to work 2 wattle stitches on this side of the stitch marker and 2 wattle stitches on this side of the stitch marker. And I will show you how that is done. And then once you do that, then we're going to continue to add 1 additional wattle stitch in the row, going back and forth for approximately 17 rows for the size large that I'm making. Check your pattern for the other sizes just to see how many times you need to go back. And so what will be happening here is we're going to be making rows for the sleeve cap. Once we get to a point where we have, let me give you the numbers here. Okay, once we get to the point where we have 19 wattles, which is about 17 or so rows, we're going to place the stitch marker, and then we're just going to continue to work in the round for the rest of the sleeve. Okay, and I'll show you where I placed my stitch marker right around here, although that's not corresponding to what I just said. But then going further, what we're going to do is we're going to work decrease rounds. And I'll show you how to decrease. And you can see the stitch markers that I used. I have 7 of them in a row, starting with this one right here, not counting that one. And that represents a place where I decreased 1 stitch and then followed it with 4 rounds working just in the wattle stitch or in pattern stitch, etc. And then after you finish all those decreases, then we get to where we're just elongating the sleeve as short or as long as you'd like. And then we finish out with 7 rounds of the ribbing. And you can see I still have plenty of strings or strands left to hide. Okay, so I wanted to just kind of explain the madness behind what we're going to do next. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to start working on the left sleeve. Now we're going to begin working on the sleeve, and I've gone ahead and placed my stitch marker. This is at the top seam, and take a look at the arm. This is the underarm, and I've placed a stitch marker right in the center. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to work the sleeve cap to begin. I'm going to start at the center, and I'm going to count 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I am going to join my yarn with a slip knot and a chain. And I'm also going to work in that same space as joining, and I'm going to work the first wattle stitch right there. That's 1. Skip 2 stitches. Work the next wattle stitch. Skip the next 2 stitches. Now in the stitch where the stitch marker is, go ahead and work another wattle stitch. Skip 2 stitches and then another wattle stitch. Skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then a single crochet in that next space. So what we have done is we have made 2 wattle stitches on this side of the seam. This is the top seam, and 2 on the other side. And after that, we're going to turn, and we are going to work only in the chain 1 spaces. Go ahead and chain 1 only, and then work the wattle stitches in those next 4 stitches. And by the way, this is the way rows 1 through 19 will be worked. Okay. Now after working those 4 wattle stitches in the chain 1 spaces, we're going to go to the next stitch along the arm, and we're going to make another wattle stitch, skip 2 stitches, and then single crochet in the next stitch, and then we're going to turn our work again. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to keep doing this until we have 19 wattle stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and turn with you just to work this row again, chain 1 only, and I'm going to work a wattle stitch in each of these chain 1 spaces. So after working a wattle stitch in each of those chain 1 spaces of the wattle stitches from the previous row, we're going to go to the next stitch that has not been worked in, and we are going to work a wattle stitch there. Skip 2 and single crochet, and again we have added another wattle stitch. Now we have 6, and then we're going to turn again. So work these back and forth, and we are forming the cap of the sleeve. So once you get 19 wattle stitches in a row, then we're going to stop and we're going to change this into rounds, and I'll show you how to do that. I've just finished 16 rows. I have a total of 19 wattle stitches across. Now this is where it may change. If you're making a larger size, you may need to do a couple of more rows. Check the pattern to be sure. So before we start this, let me just go back and briefly talk about the total count. So we are going to work the sleeve, and we're going to have a total of 32 wattle stitches for this large size. So we have 19 here. That means we need 13 more. So we're going to divide that 13 up right amongst these stitches here. So half of 13 is, well, it doesn't divide evenly. It's 6.5. So what we're going to do is we're going to work a total of about 6 to 7, ending up about here, 6 to 7 stitches in this area. Okay, and then we're going to turn, and then we're going to begin working rounds, and then we will work the remaining part of that 32, which would be 6 to 7, depending on how many you worked here. So that in total, we'll have a total of 32 single crochets for the round. It's pretty important that you try to stick as close to these numbers that I'm giving you as possible. Now, if we're working those 6 to 7 wattle stitches over these stitches, it may not come out evenly. You may have to skip more than 2 stitches in between the wattle stitches, but just work with it and see what you can do. It's not going to mean a whole lot. It's not going to be a big deal if you have to skip 3 stitches instead of 2. It really, nobody is going to know but you. So now we're ready to begin row 17. This is the last row on the sleeve cap, and we just start with the chain 1, and I'm going to go ahead and work those 19 wattle stitches, and then I'll show you the transition to the other stitches until we get to the underarm center. Now that I've finished those 19 stitches, we are now working in the single crochets, which is leading towards the underarm. All right, so we're going to work a wattle stitch. Remember, we're going to do between 6 and 7, and depending on what number we end with, we will do the other side as well to balance that out. So we're going to skip 2. We'll see how this works by just skipping 2 stitches. And if it doesn't work, we can just skip more or fewer. So that's 2 stitches. And that's 3. And that's 4. Skip 2. That's 5. Okay, and this is 6. Skip 2, and it looks like we're going to do 7. This is actually fine. So we'll just do 6 on the other side. Again, your numbers might be slightly different, especially if you're using a different size. All right, so we're going to skip 2, and right there I'm going to put that single crochet, because again, like I said, this was row 17. Now at this point we're going to start rounds. So we're going to chain 2 at the beginning of each round. I'm going to turn, and so this is the round where we're going to work 1 wattle stitch again in each of those chain 2 spaces. And when we get to, we're going to work this all the way around here, and then when we get to this point, we're going to work 6 wattle stitches evenly spaced along this area. And I will show you that. I will work that, and then I will show you the join once I get all the way around the sleeve. So I've worked this all the way around, and in a couple of places I did have to skip 3 stitches, which is not a problem. So now we're going to join with a slip stitch to that chain 2 of that very first stitch of the rounds that ends round 1. So we're going to chain 2 and turn, and then we're going to begin working this, and let me go ahead and put a pause on this because I want to move my stitch marker. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that first round at the underarm, which is, I'm just going to put a stitch marker right there, marking that space. And so what I'm going to do now, okay, take a look at the entire sleeve. We have the cap. So now we're just going to work round and round and around from this point on. So we're going to just work over these 32 stitches until the distance from the very first round, until we have 6 inches of fabric. Okay, so when you measure the 6 inches of fabric, do not measure from the cap. Measure it from the center arm, at the armhole right here, at the armpit area. And we're just going to work 6 inches of fabric. And then once we do that, we're going to begin decreasing, and I'll show you how to do that. So now we have the sleeve arm. So far, this marker indicates where the sleeve cap was started. And then this is the underarm where we started working in the rounds. And let me just show you that I have worked in pattern stitch until this is approximately 6 inches or so from the stitch marker. Be sure that you are measuring. And after we do that, we're going to begin decreasing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to begin the decrease section. I've gone ahead and I've chained 2. And this is how we are going to do the decrease rounds. We're going to work in pattern stitch in each waddle stitch, just the way we've been doing, working in that chain 1 space. And we're going to work this all the way around, and then when we come to the last waddle stitch, we're only going to work a single crochet and then join with a slip stitch. I'll go ahead and work that, and I'll demonstrate that for you. So after having worked these all the way around in the round, we're going to work just a single crochet in that last stitch, thereby causing a decrease. So we're going to join with a slip stitch to that first stitch of the round, chain 2, and now going back the next 4 rows, we're just going to work only in the chain 1 spaces, so thereby skipping that single crochet entirely. So we're just going to work 4 additional rounds, working over the 31 instead of 32, 31 stitches. So go ahead and do that, and then we're going to repeat this 6 times more. And what I mean by that is we're going to work the decrease round that I just showed you, followed by 4 additional rounds of working in pattern stitch. There's one very important thing that I'd like you to do though before we go any further, and that is every time you work that single crochet for a decrease, go ahead and mark it with a stitch marker. You'll thank me later on this, because this is going to help you keep very accurate track of where you are in this design. Okay, so again, double check the written pattern if you're making a larger or a smaller size for the number of decreases and the number of stitches in the round and so forth. But go ahead, and so we've marked the first one. Okay, now after we do those 4 rounds, I'm repeating myself, after we do the 4 rounds of pattern stitch, just working over those 31 stitches, then we're going to do another decrease round like this, and we're going to do that until we have a total of 7 decreases. So make sure that you label each one with a little stitch marker. If you don't have a fancy little stitch marker, just use a piece of contrasting thread, tie a little bow around it so that you know, okay, that's a decrease, and you'll know how much further you need to go. After working all of those repeats, let's take a look at the sleeve again. Just wanted to show you from the top of the sweater. This is with the front side facing. And we see the stitch marker from where we started the sleeve cap. And then here is the stitch marker for the underarm. And we did the 6 inches in the pattern stitch. And then each of these stitch markers represents one of the 7 rounds with the decrease, and of course followed by 4 additional rounds. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to work an additional 4 more rounds in pattern stitch. You may want to check the sweater to see how the length is for you personally, or check it against an item that is similar in size that you want to duplicate. And if I'm going to go ahead and add 4 additional rounds in the pattern stitch, and then I'm going to transition to the ribbing, which is going to add approximately 1 inch to 1.5 inches. So you can maybe use those measurements to decide just how long you want the sleeve to be. And again, if you want to adjust the length, this is the time now. If you want it longer, add more than 4 rounds. If you don't want it to be any longer than this, plus the ribbing, then just go ahead and you can just skip the next 4 rounds and go to the ribbing. But I'm going to go ahead and work these 4 rounds. So after working those 4 additional rounds, we're ready to go to the ribbing, and I'm just going to work this with the front side facing. And the way we're going to work in the wattle stitches is work a double crochet in the single crochet and 1 double crochet in the chain 1 space, and we're going to skip the double crochets on this round. So basically 2 double crochets for each wattle stitch. Again, 1 in the single crochet and 1 in the chain 1 space. After that first round, go ahead and work 6 additional rounds of the ribbing and then fasten off. Well, I hope you enjoyed crocheting the Colossae cabled cardigan or vest. If you did, I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to comment in the comment sections right below. God bless. Bye-bye.